I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Democratic member of Congress Jamie Raskin, who was one of the leaders on the January 6th committee, just gave an interview on a podcast called Skullduggery. It's a Yahoo podcast. And in this podcast, Jamie Raskin predicted that Donald Trump will spend the rest of his days in prison behind bars. He suggests possibly with Secret Service there, although it will be an issue of first impression where Secret Service would actually be positioned when Donald Trump is behind bars for the rest of his life. Let me play this clip of Jamie Raskin from this podcast called Skullduggery, and then we'll talk about it at the end of the clip. Play the video.
And I'm very serious about him facing the consequences and, paying for the cost of his actions. It's just that I think that's not the only thing here. And, he could spend the remaining days of his misanthropic life behind bars, presumably with Secret Service agents, some of whom, might belong with him there. I don't know. But
how does that work? Do Secret Service agents protect him inside the prison that he might be sentenced to?
Like everything else with Donald Trump, it's a case of first impression. I mean, would they be standing outside the bars or would they be inside the bars? Who knows? But the point is that, that fundamentally now is not going to address the primitive forces of authoritarianism, racism, anti-Semitism that Donald Trump has unleashed in the country.
It should also be noted that Jamie Raskin, prior to becoming a member of Congress, was a constitutional law scholar, a constitutional law teacher, deeply, deeply educated on the Constitution. And so his words resonate extra powerfully here as well. And really 2 points that Jamie Raskin brings up here in the interview, and let's just address both of them. The first point he brings up is that Donald Trump is directly responsible for the January 6th insurrection and should face consequences, including being in prison for the rest of his life. Obviously, the January 6th committee made 4 criminal referrals to the Department of Justice. Special counsel Jack Smith has at least 2 grand juries now impaneled in Washington, D.C. federal court, where subpoenas had been flying over the past month to different state election officials, local election officials, in connection with the January 6th insurrection grand jury. And there's also the grand jury relating to Donald Trump's theft of thousands of government records, including top secret, sensitive, compartmented information that Donald Trump hid and concealed at Mar-a-Lago and potentially elsewhere. And so the January 6th committee released its final report, 845 pages, and in addition to releasing the report and perhaps equally powerful that we've been covering here on the MeidasTouch Network, and I would tell all of you, go and watch all of the videos we've done where we've been analyzing the deposition testimony of witnesses that the January 6th committee has taken. And we started, of course, with the first batch. These were all the traitors in Donald Trump's inner circle who all invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination and refused to answer questions. People like Roger Stone and Mike Flynn, who were communicating with Mark Meadows at the Willard Hotel leading up to and during the January 6th insurrection, when they were asked questions by the January 6th committee like, do you believe there should be fascist coups in the United States of America? Roger Stone and Mike Flynn would answer the question, I must most respectfully invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, and they would refuse to answer. Then you had people like Charlie Kirk and Nick Fuentes and Kelly Ward, who chairs the Republican Party in Arizona, who all invoke their Fifth Amendment rights on the most basic questions like, where do you live and are you a part of this organization? And you'll recall these are like the biggest blowhards in the world who go to the rallies and speak in the right-wing echo chamber. I mean, you've got Kelly Ward at the rally that took place, one of the dwindling Trump rallies over the summer, when she was like, I'm ultra MAGA. We are all part of the orange mafia. Who's with me? And then when she's asked questions, I invoke the Fifth Amendment. I invoke the Fifth Amendment. So there was that batch of records. But then we get to see the depositions of people who spoke to the January 6th committee, people who were courageous, like Cassidy Hutchinson, people who were less courageous, like McEntee, the who was in Trump's inner circle at the time, who worked for, who was Donald Trump's, bag carrier or whatever, and who was involved in a lot of the terminations of people like, this is the Trump administration, which you get, terminating people like the Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, replacing him with Christopher Miller, so that really Kash Patel could become the chief of staff to the Secretary of Defense and basically run the Defense Department. How scary is that? And to stop things like the National Guard from actually being activated on the January 6th insurrection. But from the deposition testimony, we're seeing more and more things like they were like burning all of these records at the White House. There were PowerPoint presentations that were being delivered about the coup. You had Marjorie Taylor Greene bragging about how QAnon was going to show up at the January 6th insurrection. That was some of the things that were revealed in the deposition testimony. And so very compelling information. Also, Mark Meadows' communications with individuals inside the Willard Hotel. And obviously, Mark Meadows is going to be a major target of the Department of Justice's investigation, of Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation. Mark Meadows stopped cooperating with the January 6th committee after turning over a batch of text records. He sued the January 6th committee, ended up losing that, but basically running out the clock. But he's not going to run out the clock on Special Counsel Jack Smith, who likely already has the other text messages and all of the other emails from Mark Meadows at this point. And I would be shocked if Mark Meadows is currently not cooperating in lieu of his own prosecution, which I think Mark Meadows could easily be tried and convicted of seditious conspiracy and spend the rest of his days. So I think he knows that. I think he's cooperating with the Department of Justice. And so look, 2023, I have a great degree of confidence will be a year that Donald Trump is held accountable. We have the right person for the job, Special Counsel Jack Smith, who is engaged in the investigation. All of the right steps are being taken, and the confidence you're seeing there from Jamie Raskin that Trump will spend the rest of his days in prison is reflective of the confidence that I think most legal scholars, most legal observers feel right now. And I know there was the Mueller letdown. By the way, Mueller had about 30 plus indictments, including Donald Trump's top campaign advisor, Paul Manafort, including the former national security advisor, Mike Flynn, all people who Donald Trump pardoned, linking them with direct communications and direct contacts with the highest level of officials in Russia, either convicted or pled guilty. Trump, of course, pardoned them all. You don't get higher connections than like the main Russian ambassador who Mike Flynn covered up communications with and then ultimately pled guilty to. But ultimately, Mueller did not indict Donald Trump. He relied on these norms that you can't indict sitting presidents. That doesn't exist right now. Special Counsel Jack Smith is very different than Mueller. Donald Trump is not a sitting president. Donald Trump does not have immunity, despite Donald Trump being so desperate. We see him posting on his social media platform, I have absolute immunity. He does not have absolute immunity at all. And I think Special Counsel Jack Smith will indict Donald Trump before the summer. There are some legal observers, very, very, very well respected legal observers like Preet Bharara, who was a former United States attorney in New York, who believes Trump will be indicted in January. My timeline is a little further out. I think we're looking more April, May, June, but we will see. But there's a great degree of confidence that justice is coming and the wheels of justice moving in the right direction. So that was part one of what Jamie Raskin said. But part two is equally important and also alarming, which is that Donald Trump created this fascist movement, and Trump may have been stopped, but this MAGA extremist fascism is a major, major problem. And look, one of the things we see in the January 6th committee report, as Donald Trump fashioned himself as a Mussolini, is Trump wanted this military procession. Go check out, we did a whole nother video on this. to use National Guards, use 10,000 National Guard troops, not to protect the Capitol, but as a procession when he would walk into the Capitol with the insurrectionists to overthrow our democracy. That's what Trump was thinking about with these 10,000 National Guardsmen, because we also know from Christopher Miller and his testimony before the January 6th committee, that's the acting Secretary of Defense at the time, that Donald Trump never made an order. There was never an order ever made about 10,000 National Guard troops to protect the Capitol building at all. But that 10,000 National Guard number was actually Trump floating that in his inner circle about the procession he wanted when he wanted to topple our democracy. And that's in the January 6th committee report. And it comes from witness statements of people who Donald Trump said stuff like that to. And by the way, they'll be called as witnesses in Special Counsel Jack Smith's potential future criminal trial against Donald Trump. But talking about the fascism, talking about this MAGA movement that Donald Trump created, it is incredibly important in 2023 for us to combat that with media networks like this at the MeidasTouch Network. Because you have the pro-fascist media, which injects disinformation into people's veins every single day. They do the work purely for MAGA fascism, for authoritarianism, frankly, for Russia. It clearly appears. It's my opinion that it clearly appears to be that way. And sometimes Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is the one. Why are they saying all these things to destroy America? Because they want to destroy America. That's what MAGA fascists want to do. They don't want democracy. They don't like law and order. That's why when Donald Trump steals thousands of government records, they go, let's abolish laws on espionage. Let's abolish the FBI. Let's abolish the Department of Justice to permit a lawless authoritarian to steal nuclear secrets and to steal top secret classified records that places our military in peril because they want to destroy our country. Occam's razor, the simplest explanation. But the both sides media, the large media, both sides of it are just like, well, here's a Democrat, here's a Republican, these are liberals, these are conservative. People like Mike Flynn, they're very conservative. They're not conservative. They're fascist. They're extremists, and we need to call it out. We need to use the right language. We need to push back. We need to push as hard as we did in the midterms every single day in 2023, and we need to fight for the truth. We need to fight for our democracy. We need to support our Constitution. We need to do that by making sure our justice system works, by making sure we have federal judges who enforce law and order, who support our Constitution. And we need to talk about and expose the MAGA fraud, the extremism that's taking place every single day. Marjorie Taylor Greene, not a fringe character anymore in the MAGA party. For all purposes, she's running MAGA House Republicans. The House Republicans, Kevin McCarthy's a proxy, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is really running the show, and they want to do things like book burning, and they want you to focus and get really angry about things like Mr. Potato Head and pronouns, and they want to attack teachers, and they want to do all of these things so they could pick your pocket, redistribute wealth to the billionaires and their fascist MAGA grifting movement. Meanwhile, we need to focus on the real issues that matter. We need to keep highlighting it. And that's what we're going to do here at the MeidasTouch Network, when we're going to talk about things like healthcare and education and making those more affordable, more accessible. We're talking about jobs. People deserve to get paid for their hard labor, not a minimum wage. They deserve to get paid more than a living wage. They deserve to get paid with dignity, and their working conditions need to be great. They need to have good working conditions. We need to make sure we support those types of things. We need to support a woman's freedom over her body, the right of people to marry who they want to marry without MAGA Republicans stepping in and saying, you can't marry that person. You can't do this. You can't do that. That's not freedom. That's not freedom. And that's what we're going to be talking about here on the MeidasTouch Network in 2023. But I am definitely happy that we have people like Raskin, Representative Raskin, speaking out on these issues as well. and his confidence is a confidence that I share as well. I also just want to say that my heart goes out to Representative Congressman Raskin. He has shared with the world that he has been diagnosed with diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, which is a serious but curable form of cancer, and he's about to embark on a course of chemoimmunotherapy and outpatient medical treatment at the Georgetown University Hospital. And so our heart goes out to him. We're thinking about you. We're praying for you. And you are a true American patriot. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit the subscribe button. We are on our way to 1 million subscribers thanks to your incredible support. And in addition to subscribing here, check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. You'll love the exclusive content you can only get there, but most importantly, help grow this independent media platform. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas.
Our blue wall stopped the red wave and election deniers got denied election. That's why we're celebrating with the new Democracy Prevails team. We've got lots of work to do, but we should all be proud that when democracy was tested, democracy prevailed. You've earned this. Don't wait. Get yours right now at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.